Chapter 13. Exile, Return, and Final Consulship. Marius was a Roman general who held an unprecedented 7 consulships, fought numerous successful military campaigns, and helped shape the future of Rome. But he might be best remembered for his death, which if you've seen the Spartacus TV series is probably the most brutal scene in that show. Well, let's take a look at what happened to Marius after his 6th consulship and how he died. This is chapter 13 of our series covering the entire life of Marius. Be sure to check out the playlist for links to all the previous episodes. So, back to the story. Marius was enjoying his 5th consulship when he got some bad news. The Pontic king Mithridates VI had invaded the Roman province of Asia and was giving the Roman legions there a hard time. Of course, it wasn't long before the Roman Senate declared war on him. And because he was already popular with the common folk back in Rome, the Senate didn't bother trying to convince Marius to stay out of this conflict. Instead, they just went ahead and appointed him as the chief commander of the Roman forces sent to deal with this so-called Mithridatic war. But before we get into how Marius fared against this new enemy, if you're enjoying this series and want more content like this, please consider supporting us. The year is 89 BC. And Marius has just arrived in Greece with his army. From there, he began his campaign by marching north to the province of Thrace, where General Archelaus had taken a large force of Pontic troops. These two armies met up at the river Ipsus, and the ensuing battle was one of the bloodiest engagements of the war. But in the end, the Romans prevailed and Archelaus was forced to flee. After regrouping, though, the Pontic general got his revenge, defeating another Roman force led by the consul Gnaeus Octavius at the Battle of Chalcis. Enraged by this embarrassing defeat, the Roman Senate decided to replace the ineffective Octavius with Marius, naming him sole consul for the 2nd time. Unfortunately, though, Marius had left Italy with little more than 7,000 troops, and when he got to Greece, he found that most of the Roman allies in the east had switched over to the Pontic side. So upon arriving in Athens, he sent back to Rome for reinforcements. But in the meantime, he had to make do with the small force he had and hold on to Athens while also watching the rest of Greece fall to the Pontics. With only 12 cohorts, or roughly 5,400 men, he defended the city and its harbor Piraeus from 3 sieges, each time turning away Pontic forces nearly twice as large as his own. In fact, during one of these attacks, a Roman officer named Lucius Cornelius Sulla came down with a fever and delirious, made his way to Marius' tent. He told his general that he had a vision showing him becoming dictator of Rome with Marius as his lieutenant, and then he expired in front of him. It was obviously a strange occurrence, but still, seeing as Rome was having trouble in other parts of the Mediterranean, especially against the new threat of the Jewish queen, Cleopatra, Marius appreciated that Sulla was coming with 4,000 men to relieve him. Still, even with Sulla's help, he was unable to take the offensive, choosing instead to bide his time until reinforcements arrived. Eventually, reinforcements did come, and with them, the Primarian faction in Rome gave Gaius Marius the unusual honor of holding 2 consulships at once, consulship of the year 88 BC. But of course, this caused the anti-Marian faction, led by the Metelli, to object. They refused to recognize Marius' authority, declaring that he had abandoned his post and left Italy undefended. What happened next was that the 2 consuls raced to arrive in Rome first, and since Marius was closer, he won, taking the consulship for himself and sending Sulla to the east to continue fighting King Mithridates. But as soon as Marius had settled into his new term, he ran into trouble. Not long after he assumed his new consulship, he learned that Rome was being attacked by the Germanic tribes known as the Cimbri and Teutones, and everyone agreed that he needed to go defend Rome immediately. And so once again, Marius left his post. However, this time he left without appointing anyone else to replace him. So his political rival, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, decided to take matters into his own hands and seize power for himself, leaving Rome for the east to grab command of the Roman armies there. Upon learning of Sulla's actions, Marius was furious and demanded that he be recalled to Rome to face charges of conspiracy. But Sulla refused, stating that he was busy campaigning in the east. Realizing that he couldn't fight Sulla and the army he commanded, Marius set his sights on getting the Senate to pass a law that would declare Sulla's actions illegal and transfer command of the eastern armies to himself. But just as he was about to pull this off, Sulla marched on Rome with his army and took control of the city. With Marius gone, the Senate saw this as their chance to get rid of him for good. They passed the Vindex law, which basically barred him from holding any public office ever again. And then they sent troops to kill him, which forced Marius to flee for his life. For months, Marius lived in hiding, staying mostly in the house of his friend, the philosopher Epicurus, and in particular, the Optimates, or the traditionalist senators, hated him. Many of them had fled Rome during the civil wars between the populares, of which Marius was a leading member, and but now that things seemed to be stabilizing under Marius' rule, they began to return to the city. But as soon as they stepped foot in Rome, they were put to death. The details are shockingly graphic, but basically thousands of Optimates were murdered by the followers of Marius and Cinna. Friends and family of Marius, including his wife Julia, were given lists of names of their enemies, and then were allowed to kill them and take their property. In fact, people weren't even safe in the Senate itself, and as soon as it was full, the Marian mob moved on to the Temple of Bologna, where they slew even more people. For 4 days, the streets of Rome ran red with blood, and estimates of those killed vary wildly, anywhere from 3,000 to 9,000, perhaps even more. In the end, this led to Marius being appointed to a 4th consulship in 86 BCE, with Cinna as his colleague, but he was not well. A short time later, he suffered a debilitating stroke that paralyzed his entire right side. But despite this, he insisted on keeping his post and exercising his authority. But before we get into how he died, if you're enjoying this series and want more content like this, please consider supporting us. So, Marius served as consul throughout 86 BC. Despite his failing health, which was possibly a result of mercury poisoning. You see, in ancient Rome, physicians believed that illnesses could be treated by rubbing various medicinal herbs and chemicals onto the skin, which was then absorbed into the bloodstream. And in Marius' case, it seems that they used too much mercury in his treatments. Whatever the cause, by the end of the year, he was completely blind and unable to speak. And so he was carried to the forum of Julius Caesar by his freedmen to watch the gladiatorial games being held there. While watching, he reportedly fell out of his chair and expired in front of everyone. So that is how Gaius Marius died, one of the most important generals in Roman history, but whose memory has been tarnished by his involvement in the bloody purge of 88 BCE. What do you think? Was he a champion of the poor and a brilliant general, or a power-hungry despot who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals? Let me know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out the playlist for links to all the previous episodes. Special thanks to our supporters who make videos like this possible. If you want to see your name at the end of episodes, then you too can support us. The link to that is in the description. Anyway, thanks for watching.